Steve, talk us through the success of these programs in the past. What was the success like in 2015 with the Syrian refugee settlement program?
Well, it was in its own terms enormously successful for the numbers of Syrians who found a home in the UK and have settled well up and down the country. And I think also it has been enormously successful for the communities where they've settled too, because it's an organised programme. It has introduced communities essentially to each other, new arrivals and settled people. It's been a wonderful thing. And you hear so much feedback, including what you've just heard from the Northeast, about how successful that has felt for people who really want to feel part of doing this country's bit to support people who are in real desperate need.
Steve, how much confidence do you have this time that we might see a system like that? One of the MPs yesterday said in that emergency session that they wanted to see a resettlement that was as fast as we'd ever seen before, something akin to, the kinder transport. Would something like that be actually viable and practical?
I think there are real worries about what's been announced about resettlement. Of course, it hasn't started yet. We don't exactly know what the plans are. The Home Office is still having to work them out because this has come so late. There is a relocation scheme for locally employed staff. And the real issue right now, quite frankly, is not so much the plans longer term for resettlement, although that's very important. It's actually the evacuation process. It's how many people, particularly those who are at immediate risk to their lives, how many of them are going to be able to be got out of Afghanistan? And that's really where our urgent focus is, and I hope it's where others are. Of course, as you've highlighted in the introduction, there are staff, diplomatic, military, others on the ground who are doing amazing work in obviously incredibly difficult circumstances. I'm sorry that more planning hadn't gone into this and more people haven't been got out before now, because it's really touch and go just what is going to be possible from this point.
Well, evacuation is absolutely vital, of course, but what is the next step after that? What are the packages for social cohesion, for example?
Well, the Home Office with the last programme that we had, the Syrian programme, provided financial assistance to local authorities and indeed to community groups that were able to sponsor people direct to at least get people settled into the communities and hopefully onto their feet for at least a year or more into their future here. And the idea being, of course, to try and get people established as quickly as possible so they can start playing their full part in the community and indeed supporting themselves, because that's what people want to do. So that's the sort of package that one is looking for. I'm sure that's what the Home Office will be working out now and making available as soon as possible to local authorities. And of course, we strongly support that.
Yeah, we don't have the details of all of that yet. That will be laid out. The number of people you're talking about, Steve, at its maximum capacity would be 20,000 currently. Are you happy with that number?
Well, I think we have to realise that it is a modest number of people given the scale of the emergency and also what is being done by many other countries over a much longer period of time in terms of hosting Afghan refugees. But nonetheless, it's significant, it's very important, it will be vital for very many people. What we would like to see is to ensure that that programme goes well and is effective, that also we don't forget the numbers of Afghans who are already here in our communities, many of whom need to receive their protection status, not simply have their lives put on hold while it's quite clear they cannot be safely returned. I think something else could be thought about. There are many Afghans who are settled in our communities, who've been living here very many years, some of whom are even British citizens now. They have families back in Afghanistan. Many of them are in a position to support those families if they're allowed to sponsor them to join them. And it would be really helpful if that was looked at too.
And do we think this is something the government is looking at? Obviously, we don't know what the programme is going to look like, but we can reflect on what it looked like in 2015 and if that was a support structure that was put in place.
Well, it did put a support structure in place for resettlement. I'm afraid it didn't do anything to increase the opportunity for family reunion of people, including to people already strongly settled here and able to support their family. And I think it really must do that this time round.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.